Well, thank you guys for being here today. I really appreciate it. How many were not here yesterday? Oh, boy, okay. All right. We got some catching up to do. Okay, and how many of you would consider yourself fairly new writers? All right. How many of you are seasoned? All right. And then how many of you are would consider yourself professionals? Okay. If you have anything to add today, I don't mind. Let's start by praying. Dear Father, thank you so much for this room full of people who want to write for your glory, Father. And God, I just pray that you'd be with me, that you would help me to speak with passion today, help me speak with clarity. And Father, I pray that it would be a blessing, Father, as we talk about these things. And God, I pray for each person in this room that you would just lead them on the journey that you have for them, and that they would, with bravery, follow you to where you take them. We just pray these things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Hello. All right, so just so you know, I taught this class at a film festival long time ago. And then I went on and taught classes for homeschoolers and at co-ops and a bunch of other places. And they eventually took all the information and put it into a book. My goal was to write a workbook where you literally read about things, and then you pray about them and brainstorm and then fill in the blanks. And then by the time you get about to the middle of the book, you have a story concept, and then hopefully it takes you all the way through, all right? So that was my goal with the book. Like I've explained a few times, it's a lot like getting your driver's license. I brought this up last class. When you're first getting your driver's license, it gives you all the rules, right? 300 feet before the signal, you turn left. And it gives you turn into the nearest lane and all of those rules. But then when you become an experienced driver, right, you start to ignore those little rules because you start to know how to drive, and it's no longer those little rules anymore, right? So today what I'm doing is I'm giving you the manual, okay? So I'm really thinking about new writers as I'm talking about these things. Want to encourage new writers for just a moment. I got to tell you real quick my story, and then I'll tell you more about telling stories. For my wife and I, just my background is I'm a creationist, and I've been a creation speaker for a very long time, and that's really my passion. And I would go out and speak at conferences, and there would be book tables out there, and we'd be at the book tables, and everybody would come up to the book tables and say, "What have you got for kids?" And back in those days, there was really no creation materials for kids. So my wife and I began to dream about putting together an audio drama. And we went on, and it became Jonathan Park. And so we've been talking about this for a long time in the car. We got to write a story. We got to make this audio drama. And so one night we actually went out to a pizza restaurant with one of those yellow tablets. And we wrote out all the names of the characters and what they were about and all of that kind of stuff. And then we took that yellow tablet and we tossed it in the trunk of our car, and it rolled around in there for months and months and months. And every once in a while I'd say to my wife, maybe we should start writing this thing. And we never did. Was it because we were too busy? Yeah, that's the excuse we used. What was the real reason we weren't writing it? Writers, you guys know? Well, yeah, but even bigger than that, actually. Yes! We were scared to write. I don't know if anybody here relates to that. I've noticed that most writers are scared because as long as you don't write something, nobody can criticize it, right? Yep, bingo. But as soon as you start writing, people can criticize, and they will. All right? But you know what? You've got to push back the fear. So here's my story is one night I finally came home from work and I said, we've just got to write this story. And so I got the yellow tablet out of the trunk, and it's got like soda on it now and food and other stuff from the trunk, right? And things are stuck on it. And I get it out, and my wife was gone, but I had an evil plot, and my evil plot was to get my wife to start writing, because my wife is my writing partner, okay? So anyway, she was gone, but I opened up our laptop, and I started writing on it because I knew she was going to be home like in about 5 or 10 minutes. So she walks through the door and she goes, "Pat, what are you doing?" And I said, "No, I'm writing our story." "Wait, what? You're writing it?" "Yeah." And so she goes, I can't believe you're writing it. And I said, yep, gonna do it. And so she plopped down on the couch, and I'm sitting there going, tick, 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 tick. And she's just kind of watching me. And then she went into the bedroom, and I hear just sorrow, crying and wailing coming from the bedroom. And I go in there, and it's just my wife on the bed going, and she was freaking out. And I said, honey, it's going to be okay. We can do this, right? And so I go back to writing, and she's back on the couch. And so pretty soon I say, yeah, what do you think about this line right here? And so she came over, and she looked over my shoulder, and she goes, well, I think it'd be better if you said it this way. And I went, okay. And then pretty soon she was going, oh, and you should change that. And I go, why don't you sit down and you can make those changes? And pretty soon she was at the laptop and I was sitting on the couch. Yes! It's now, 20-something years later. It has been the biggest adventure of our lives. That was our first project. It actually became a book, then it became an audio drama, and then we've worked on several storytelling projects after that, and it has been the funnest journey ever. If you would have gone back to the guy with the yellow tablet rolling around in the trunk, I didn't think it was ever going to get out of the trunk. But it did. And it's been the biggest adventure. And you know why it's been the biggest adventure? Is because God has done some powerful things through it. And it's not because of me. It's really not. It's just that God chooses when and how he's going to use productions. So the reason I want to tell you that is for those of you that are sitting in your chairs going, this is scary stuff, it's okay. Everybody feels that way. But go for it. If God has truly given you that talent and he's calling you to do it, go for it. It could turn out to be the biggest adventure of your life. It really could. All right. Thanks for letting me share that. Okay, quick run through of everything. Okay, how many people were here during class 1 that I taught? Okay, a few of you. Okay, diehards, thank you so much. How many were here for class 2? Okay, and again, a lot of you for the first time. I'm just going to run through real quick as a review. A lot of times what people say to do is come up with a great what if. A what if is a one-sentence statement that asks the question, what if, and then your story is stated in that what if. What if a group of pilgrims escaped and came to a new country or something like that? It's a what if, okay? But what I said during class number 1 is, as Christians, what if instead we start by thinking of what purpose does God want me to write for? What thing do I want to communicate? What message is it that God has for me? And then you come up with your what if, and then you tell your story. Choosing a what if, once you know your eternal message, then you can come up with your what if. I really encourage you to always brainstorm, all right? We talked about the difference between an internal versus plot-driven. Internal is a story that's going on inside. An external story or a plot-driven story is one that's going on externally to the characters. By the way, which one do you really want in your story? Both! Woohoo! That's right, you want to be driving both. You want the internal plot going on and you want the external plot going on. We talked about creating characters, and basically I came up with 2 different steps. One is you want to come up with your character's personality, but then you also want to come up with their role. We also talked about their flaws and how their flaws should match up with the eternal message that you're trying to teach. We talked about all of the different types of roles that characters can play in a story. I showed you how you could make a 1-page of your characters. By the way, for those of you that weren't here, I always encourage people to find a picture on the internet of what they think their character looks like. Because just by staring at their face, it tells you all kinds of information about your character, right? Just by looking at that guy, I can write a whole 1-page deal on him. I wrote his name, the type of character he is, his personality, and then I even just wrote a backstory. Do I even have a story yet before I write the backstory of the character? No, I just wrote what I thought based on his picture, and guess what? That backstory could be part of my real story. Most important thing with characters is a character arc, okay? You've got to have that internal story going for your main character and maybe a couple of your other characters as well. The way I showed you to do that is you pick a starting point for your character, you pick an ending point, and you work through an actual arc, something that would be true changes, true steps that a character would have to take to get from the starting to the beginning. The more realistic your arc is, the more your audience is going to buy it. And the more they buy it, the deeper your eternal message is going to go. If you do the cheesy thing where they've been a non-believer their whole life, and then in the last scene they go, I believe! Everybody goes, that is total cheese. By the way, I say that having written a lot of those kind of stories. Just so you know, the mirror's shining back and it's looking kind of ugly. All right, so those were some of the things we talked about. In class number 2, we talked about how stories are told in 3 acts. Setup, conflict, and resolution. And then we went through and talked in detail what an actual story structure looks like. So those are the things that we've covered so far, and I just wanted to catch you up with that just a little bit. So any questions? For those of you who haven't been here, I'm sure you could ask like 100 questions because you weren't here for it all. But
is what you discussed in your workbook?
Yes. Today I'm like a talking version of my book, except for the book goes into a lot more details on everything. It's hard to fit everything into 3 50-minute time segments. So. Okay, so one thing from yesterday is we talked about this, and maybe I'll just cover this real quick, is that we've got character arcs, which are the journey that your characters are on. I'm not going to go through all of that again, but it's very important to have deep stories, internal stories that's going on in your characters. And then for story structure, we start off with Act 1, falling in love with your characters, establishing what their original universe, their beginning universe looks like. There's an inciting incident that comes into their life, which shakes up their life forever. It's got to be powerful enough to drive them through to the point where they've got to make a critical decision. You set the goal of the story, and then it's victories and defeats. About halfway through, you find out that the goal is even deeper than you thought it was, okay? And then you head towards what looks like victory, and then it's ultimate defeat, and then ultimate victory, and then you show how your universe at the end is different than the one at the beginning. Okay, so we talked about all of those yesterday. I just wanted to run through those really quickly because today we're going to be talking about that. But somebody at the end of class asked a really great question, and I meant to cover it yesterday and I forgot to. An inciting incident is the thing that happens to your character that's going to drive the rest of their journey. It's got to be big enough and believable enough that as they take the rest of the journey, that inciting incident has got to be the thing that was big enough to do that. So somebody asked yesterday after class was over, can you put your inciting incident at the start of your story? What do you guys think? Yeah, because you want to grab their attention right away. So if you're going to put an inciting incident at the start, there's a couple of things that you've got to think through, okay? So if you want to start off your story, that's a great way to hook your audience, right? So here's some questions. Can you write a powerful enough inciting incident that they care about the characters enough to care about the inciting incident? I keep bringing up that, if you take your characters and push them off the cliff and they don't care about them, they don't really care if they go over the cliff. But first, you fall in love with the character and then you shove them over the cliff. And then everybody cares. So one of the dangers of starting with your inciting incident is you have to do it in such a way that people care enough that the inciting incident is powerful enough.
Or if they already know the story.
Right.
If it's one that's it's in history, and they already care about it. That's why they're...
Yeah, okay, yep, great point. I appreciate that. Yep. Okay, so a lot of times when people start with inciting incidents, those are the ones that say only a few days earlier or 3 years ago, right? And then they go back and they travel back to the start again, right? But when you start with your inciting incident and then you travel back to the start again, guess what you run into again? Your inciting incident. So what you can do is you can show that from a different perspective or give different information. So in other words, it's the same event, but now maybe you're showing a completely different aspect of it. Yeah, no, I guess that's it. Oh, here's the last thing I'll say about using the inciting incident at the start. This is one of those ninja moves that experienced writers know how to do, okay? So I told you that I'm kind of giving you the driver's manual edition of story writing. So at that point, you're getting into some pretty advanced stuff, but you can do it, and yeah, it works well. All right, so there's all the catch up. Now you ready for the real class to begin? All right, you got a handout. And today I am going to talk for the first part of the class about the importance of an outline. Now, I know well enough to know that there are outline haters in this room. There are people that hate it. I'm an artist, a free spirit. I'm a creative writer. I just kind of go with my feelings and let them drive my story. An outline is limiting. It's like a cage, right? And then you're in the cage. And does anybody feel like that? I can see people laughing. I know you're out there. Let me just give you a few reasons why you should use an outline. I have become convinced that an outline is 100% necessary. Without an outline, you're probably not going to succeed for a few reasons. Most writers, capital M, most writers get about halfway through and then they're just wandering around aimlessly. It gets frustrating and then they quit. Okay? So an outline is super important. Here's another reason that's important. On your sheet, I put these down. One thing is that I've learned from a lot of people that most bad stories, another capital M, if not almost all of them, bad stories are not because of your characters or your content or all that. Most bad stories are bad because your structure was wrong. Well, if that's the case, all of a sudden it becomes really important on why an outline is super important, is because you want to make sure that you're following the structure of a story, whereas if you're just freewheeling it and going with your emotions, you're not going to hit the story structure at all. Okay, so ordering your story. You know, when I've got an outline of a story, I use Word, by the way, with numbers, okay? When I'm outlining a story, you know what I can see is I can see the order of events happening in my story at a glance, and you know what I can do is I can start dragging them around. Wow, that is super helpful to be able to do that. How many of you have done the freewheeling? You've got now 120 pages of your story, and you start going, I think I'm going to move this, and then you're like lost in this ocean of text, right? And you're like grabbing a whole block of text, and then you're trying to move it, and then pretty soon you didn't move the whole scene, and then pretty soon you're just completely lost, right? But in an outline, you're just dragging bullet points around. You know, the other thing that's great with an outline is it's so easy to look at an outline and kind of feel the rhythm of your story and to go, something's totally missing. I'm missing something right here. It needs something. And to be able to see it. So much easier to do that with an outline than it would be with pages and pages and pages of text. The other thing that is great with an outline is you can find the fluff to cut right away. You're looking at that outline and you go, you know, this one, I really don't need that. Boom, whack it out, and it just saved you all of the time of writing fluff that you're going to cut out anyway. Write with purpose, I'm going to save that one. And write with passion, I'm going to save those two because the real power of the outline is coming pretty soon, okay? All right, I'm a simple guy who does everything very simple and very easily, and probably you experienced writers, you may have to close your eyes and plug your ears right now. I'm going to show you the Pat Roy super simple outline in a can. It's like you add water and boom, you've got an outline, okay? You guys ready for that? Matter of fact, when I show this in classes, usually people can't believe how easy this is, but I love it, actually, myself. Okay, any questions about the importance of an outline before I start? By the way, anybody experienced in this room that want to share other reasons for outlines? Yes?
At school, like, before, like, a strategy I had for, like, essays and stuff, because we had to write essays for a test, I would write an outline, and it would help me organize my thoughts and, like,
Yeah.
put them into place and how I would want the story to be built up.
Exactly right. Yep, that's exactly it. Yes?
Another thing, once you've made an outline, you don't have to follow the chronological order of events. You can just jump around to what you're feeling at the moment.
Yes. You're stealing away my content from the second part of this class. Nice work. Exactly. By the way, we're going to open that up in just a minute and see what power there is there, because that is the secret sauce right there. Yes?
When I'm a hey, I'm writing a book here.
Right.
It gave me, like, authenticated it to me that, hey, this is a real book and this is real.
Right.
And I'm a writer.
Right. Right, well, and you bring up an interesting point is that already your story is starting to come together without all the work of writing your story, and you're already starting to be encouraged because you're going, oh, I've got content here, and this is looking pretty good. Well, except for that one, delete.
You mentioned cutting out fluff, but also it could help you find where you need to fill in more information. Because like for mine, I knew where my character was starting, and I knew where I wanted her to end, but I was missing, there needed to be some action and some of those
Yes.
failures in between.
Yes.
To see, okay, I need, 2 or 3 things to happen here to help me to see where I needed to fill in more.
Right, exactly. By the way, I'm kind of the organizing one when we write, and my wife is like the no bounds. I mean, like, my wife is like all over the map, which is so amazing because you know what I do? It's a great husband-wife team because I can tap into that a lot of times where she's like around Jupiter and I'm going, she's gone. And then I go, wait, that's really good. I'll organize that for you. You know what I've learned working with her is that outlines, I think the reason people hate them is because they feel restricting and like it's the analyzer working instead of the creative person. But you can be very creative on an outline. Take that creativity you've got and pour it into the outline because you want a creative outline. Okay, yes, sir.
I would say there's a different approach you can use in terms of the mechanics. And to me, this is a perfect writing room because I don't like to write in outlines. I use Post-its on a blank wall because
Yes, exactly.
it's so easy to move around.
Yes, exactly. Matter of fact, I'm going to bring up that point too, and that was, yes, exactly.
The other thing is, in the instructions that I've had and the books that I've read, they stress the importance of, before you really get into deep into writing your story, you must know how it ends.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to even advocate that you should know the purpose of every single scene before you start to write. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. All right, so you guys ready for instant outline?
Yes.
This almost feels like cheating. And I'm sorry if I offend you at all, but it's okay. I don't know how you do your outlines. We ought to find out since you write a lot. That would be great. All right, so here's what I do is I've got my story arc. And so what I do on my own document, so I do this in a document, or if you're using the book, I have you go through and identify and brainstorm every single one of these components. What's your establishing universe? You know what I do is I open a document and I go, oops, your guys are that direction. Establishing universe, and then I write out what I want the establishing universe to look like. How do I fall in love with the characters? Boom, I make that another bullet point. How do I fall in love with the characters? Inciting incident. I actually literally write inciting incident, and then I say what I know about the inciting incident. At this point, I may not know a lot, right? And then I go through and say, what's the goal that I'm setting? And then I go through and say, what are defeats? What are victories? And so I go through and I literally list all of those on a document. Okay? You with me? You know what I'm doing by doing that is I'm literally writing my story already just by brainstorming, and I don't even have to worry about how it's all going to fit together yet. I just am starting to get an idea of what those are. Okay, so check out, here's where the cheating comes now. Oh, here's a picture, by the way. There you go. Can you guys see over there? Okay, for those of you over there, remember I warned you that you had to be on this side of the room. Okay, so basically, you can see on that document that basically I've just gone through, and that's basically my story arc, and I did it in 12 different points. Okay, and I just basically wrote out what part of it was going to be, okay? So that's each one of those. You guys with me so far?
Yes.
Okay, now, 2 classes ago on Monday, I taught you about how to do a character arc, and this is a very simple one, by the way, just because it fit on the screen, all right? A character arc is going to be much more in-depth than this, but this is just an example of a story arc. Okay, so you know what I do is instead of writing this on paper, like you see here, I actually put that in a document, okay? The character arc. Okay, here comes the cheaty part. Then I open up a document and I put the word outline at the top. And then I come over to my story arc and watch what I'm going to do. I'm doing a copy. I bet you guys know what's coming next. Copy and... Wait, what? Starting to look outliney already, right? But now I'm not done. There you go, there's my outline. But now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to open up my character arc for Brian. And watch this. I'm going to copy. I need some film music here. There's the paste. Of course, Word gets the numbering wrong, so I have to renumber. Boom. Look at that. Okay. So there I've got Brian's story arc in there. Now I'm going to go back down, and I'm going to grab the arc from my other character, and I'm just going to paste it in there. So basically what I've got, there's Thomas Henry, and I've copied the story arc, put it in the outline, copied the character arc of my first character, pasted it, copied from the other character, pasted it in there. I'm already starting to get an outline. Isn't that kind of cheaty? That only took me about 3 minutes. So now all that's left is ordering them and writing the story. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So what I've done there is I've taken all of the points of the script. Now remember, I want to keep the story structure together. So those first 12 that I did are the story structure. You know what I can start doing now is with the character arcs that I've got, I can start grabbing those and moving them into place. And as I'm moving them into place, I'm starting to make the order of how the whole script is going to be. Now, on my story arc, I knew that there was going to be an inciting incident, right? And that's even one of the things I've got is inciting incident. And but now, remember, for my main character, he's also got the inciting incident because that was part of his arc, right? So I probably want to merge those. And so basically what I did was I went through then and started grabbing the inciting incident on all 3 documents, and I started merging those together as one scene there. So that's what's going on the screen over there real quick. Yes?
Could I, like, because in the arc, like in the story arc, could I take, like, my ideas for, like, the different parts, for, like, how I'm falling in love with the character, and, like, just draw it, like, on a piece of paper, and then, like, under, like, where I can write down on the top of the line where it's just flat, falling in love with your character at the bottom, just do bullets of how I want my audience to fall in love with the character, and just do the same with each, like, ups and downs and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to put those all in a document, but then for your outline, you want to bring those all into the outline so you've got them all on your outline.
Okay.
So basically what you see going on over there is, I can't believe I'm still working on it, is it's amazing. I'm using actually my mind control interface right now, and I'm talking to you at the same time. It's really incredible. It's a PowerPoint plugin. So there you can see my inciting incident. Real quick, I've got to tell you, because you're going to need to know in just a second, through the last 2 classes, I've been dealing with an example story. This is a story that I've never written, but I just came up with an example story. I chose for my eternal message that I wanted to talk about the dominion mandate in the Bible. Okay, so that was my eternal message. I came up with my what if, and my what if was, what if I don't know how to say it. What if an advocate for the environment falls into the ocean and he's rescued by a whaling ship? Okay, so I thought that'd be kind of a... it's already making for a fun story, right? And then I had to choose that I had a main character, right? So my main character was kind of the hippie guy named Brian. And then the captain, the sea captain, was a wise old Christian sea captain that's the one that rescues him out of the sea. And I just thought that makes for a cool story. So you need to know that because I'm about to share with you some of those things, and you need that backstory first. All right, so I've got now on my outline, I've got all of the components of my story arc. I've got the components of my character arcs, okay? But they're not sitting in order, but now I'm starting to move them around in order, okay? For example, I've got the victories and the defeats, right? So all of a sudden, what I start doing here is I go down and I start to grab some of the victories and defeats. Here's a defeat is they can't find whales. They're out trying to whale, and they can't find them. So you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a place where I think that fits in the story arc, okay? So the timing is correct, and I'm going to just paste it in there, and I'm going to make it its own scene. Okay, so that's what I'm doing there. And then I'm going to go back and grab some of the victories and do the same thing. Do you see how I'm literally just taking the stuff that's already on my document and I'm starting to move it into place? And I think of it as like clay. I'm starting to shape the clay so that it's more and more, it's becoming filled in and more detailed. Okay? So now I've got all of that. Okay, remember that one of the things is fall in love with characters. Now look, I'm just doing this randomly, all right? I'm just going through my outline, and as things are hitting me, I'm starting to work on them. All of a sudden it hits me that I want to fall in love with my characters. Well, how do I do that? Well, right up at the top there. Can you guys see it all, or is this just like a...
No, can't see it. Can you zoom in?
You can trust me, it's really good.
Or you want to zoom in on it?
All right, so I'm adding a scene that's Brian late to work. Remember, Brian is my advocate, my greenie guy, right? Okay, so he's late to work. And so basically, I'm just adding a scene towards the start where I want the, hey, look at that. How's that for a zoom in? Okay, so Brian late to work. To show Brian's starting universe, we start out with Brian waking up on a friend's couch. He takes one look at his watch, jumps up, and heads out the door as he stumbles over some empty pizza boxes and Coke cans. He's late to work again. All right, did I write out all the details of how that scene's going to go? No, because I don't quite know yet, right? But have I got enough details there that it's starting to shape his character a bit? You're starting to learn about Brian already, right? Can I write this in such a way that he's kind of endearing to the audience? Yeah, totally, right? Now, sometimes when I'm writing these little descriptions, and here's what I like to do on my outline, is I like to have the title kind of the scene so that with a quick look, I can see what my scene's about instantly. And then I write out two different ways. One is I'm writing instructions to myself, and sometimes if I have actual dialogue that comes to me or something, I want to capture that right away. So sometimes I just drop that right into my outline so that I don't waste anything, okay? Okay, so, Thomas is my sea captain. So I've got to add a scene for Thomas. So I'm going to go now and add a scene for Thomas. Thomas helps one of his crew, okay? And so remember, we're just falling in love with characters at this moment. What's that? Oh, it will do it. It was just pure luck that I went up there as it expanded. There it goes. Let me expand it. I need to establish a normal day in the life of Thomas, okay? Show his wisdom and make the audience fall in love with him. Did I say how I was going to do that? Why didn't I say how I was going to do that? Because I don't know. But I know that has to happen there, right? I also want to show that he's a former EMT. I can use this scene to provide some action. They are out in a fishing boat with this crew. They've got an unusually large haul of fish in the nets. Thomas warns them they're stressing out the rigging by trying to bring in too many fish at one time. Just then a rope snaps and goes through a pulley. It whips back and whacks one of the men in the head, knocking him unconscious on the deck. Thomas is instantly on the scene, giving first aid and quietly taking control of the situation. I just had that thought while I was putting that bullet point down on my thing. I'm going to write it out. Later on, I can reshape it and change it, right? By the way, isn't that the awesome thing about writing, is you can change stuff at any time. You know, when I've taught these classes to people before, it's amazing how they think as soon as they type something on a paper that it's there forever. And they don't make a decision because they're just going back and forth over the decision, and it's just killing them. Just put something there. Guess what? You can go back later and change anything. Nothing's locked in forever. Now, I gave this piece of advice that came from my wife during the first class, but since there's so many new people here, I just wanted to give you one of the pieces of advice my wife gave me. She said, if you're trying to decide between two different options, what you can do is you can assign one heads, one tail, flip the quarter, and when it lands, I thought what she was going to say is go with it, whether it was heads or tails, She said, when it lands, if you're disappointed with what happened, choose the other one. It's a little twist there, but it's true, right? Isn't it funny how we deceive ourselves so much? You go, I just don't know which one is best. And then when it happens, you go, oh, bummer. God just made our brains so complex, right? All right, so next, all of a sudden, I'm thinking about a better way to define the inciting incident. So I'm going to come along now, and all of a sudden, I'm going to start defining that. Brian falls overboard. That's my inciting incident. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding just my thoughts on that. Brian is out at sea with the Green Waters Foundation ship. Wow, look, all of a sudden, the name of his organization emerged just when I was putting together an outline, right? All of a sudden, boom, there it is. And I go, wow, okay, I don't know where that came from. Like it, though. They're on a whale-saving expedition. He's standing out on deck, looking out into the sea. The sea's starting to get very rough. Over the PA, the captain specifically tells Brian to get off the deck and back inside. Suddenly, a huge wave rocks the boat, and Brian falls into the sea unnoticed. The ship continues to travel into the distance as Brian is yelling at the top of his lung. Brian falls into the sea and is rescued by a whaling boat. Brian ends up falling into the sea and left behind. Okay, redundant. Doesn't even matter, does it? I'm writing the notes to me. I want to write anything at all so I know what I'm supposed to do with that scene. Okay? All right, and then finally I've got, all of a sudden I have an idea of, well, if Brian falls into the water, now I've got to write the scene where we switch over to Thomas and we see things from his perspective where they spot him in the sea, right? So that's what I'm doing right now is I'm just adding, by the way, watch how simple this turns out to be. I don't say much here. We're in the cabin of the boat. One of the crew spots a man in the water. Boom. That's all I have right now. I don't have anything else in my mind about that scene. So I just put it there just as a placeholder, knowing that I'm going to come back and fill it out later. So there you go. Here's how I like an outline to look. By the way, if you talk to, what's the old joke? You talk to 10 different writers, you'll get 20 different opinions, right? So everybody's got their different ways of doing this. So I'm just sharing with you my way. And I've written almost, I think, probably about 200 scripts that actually made it to a publish and out to people. And for a while there, I had to write one script every 2 weeks. And so you can see why I was trying to invent fast ways to do stuff, all right? So I'm sharing with you my way, but there may be a way that serves you best. I just wanted you to see that you could put together an outline without much work. And then start looking for where the holes are and all of those things. And here's how I like an outline to look when I'm done, is again, I've got kind of a title for the scene in bold letters, and then I've got whatever it takes underneath it to tell me specifically what I need to accomplish. And then when I'm done with that outline, now I can do all the things that we talked about. I can see where the holes are, I can see where the fluff is, I can see where the timing is off, I can see that I need to move things around. And I want to do all of that in the outline form because I'm shaping that story to be the best it can be before I even write the first sentence of the story. Okay? Here's the cool news, is just like you pointed out, this gives you storytelling superpowers. Here's what I mean, is exactly what you said, but let me expand on it. Check this out. If I know every single scene, and I know every purpose of every single scene, you know what I do next? Is I do something different than most writers, by the way. Most writers start writing at the beginning. You know what I do? I look at my outline and I go, oh, baby, I can't wait to write this one. This is going to be fun. I'm passionate about that. And you know what I do is I write that scene. And then you know what I do? Is I go back to the outline and go, let's see. I like that one. And then I write that one. Do you know what I've done? I've got superpowers because that means I wrote every single scene when I was passionate about it. How different is a script where you write every sentence with purpose and you write every scene with passion? How different will that be than if you just start writing at the beginning of a story and try and make it all the way through to the end?
Well, it seems like I proposals or something for the government, and I never write the beginning,
Oh, right, okay.
because I know it's gonna change by the time I've filled in my power.
Right. Exactly right. So you're writing the things that are the most important, realizing that that's going to change the other things.
And I'm realizing, and I evolve what I'm going to propose as I'm writing it.
Yes.
And so whatever I would have written to begin with anyways is trash.
Right.
Because it's not gonna represent what I ended up with.
Right. Exactly. Okay, so here's what some of you that are like ultra like organized people that are like, you got to have everything. Is if I start here, and then I write here, and then I write here, are there going to be some problems where it didn't quite mesh right? What do? I just go back and mesh them. No problem. I just tweak on it to make them so they fit, right? So I've talked to some people where I say write it out of order, and they go, oh, write it out of order? Nothing will fit. Well, if something doesn't fit, just make it fit. You know what I'm saying? Pretty easy. Yes.
Do you ever find yourself going back to the character arc or the story?
All the time.
Yeah, and then
Yes.
do you make references to say that you? Because I like the fact that you took all of that in.
Uh-huh.
Because that way you don't miss anything from your
Right.
arcs. And then obviously, but then if you change something in the arcs later, you're like, oh, where was it that I introduced? You know, like a traceability matrix. You know, so you can go back.
Right. By the time I'm on an outline, I don't really care about that stuff anymore. You know why? It's because it's all about the outline now. By the way, these points now that are bold, those become the slug lines on your script, right? So you're just starting to fill in your script. It's kind of cool. Okay, you mentioned Post-it notes, right? Who was Post-it notes? Post-it notes. Or 3x5 cards, right? Which is kind of cool because you can get a box of 3x5 cards, and it's so easy that you can erase and change, and then you just change the order of things, right? So yeah, either Post-it notes, which I've used on a couple projects myself, which is kind of cool because it really feels good to be able to have a bunch of space on a wall and be able to move things around, or 3x5 cards.
So someone said yesterday, you can use Excel for everything. Do you ever use Excel to?
Okay, just personal note, I hate Excel. But yeah, you could. Yeah, definitely use Excel. Don't tell the person that you heard that from that I said that. Edit. No, just kidding. Yeah, no, yeah, whatever tool works best for you. It's just a way of organizing your information, right? There's so many pieces of software that you could use to do this. I personally just use Word because it's satisfying to fight with the numbering all the time. I don't know. Yes.
There are like people or beginners who want to start writing stories. Would you recommend starting with short stories or doing full chapter books for a beginner?
Well, yeah, I think writing short stories, right, is a great way to go. But yeah, I don't think it's wrong to try a long form, right? Because you're learning as you're going. So, yeah. So I think short stories are great. You know what would be maybe the best about short stories is you make it there a lot faster and get encouraged a lot quicker. So probably short stories. But yeah, if somebody takes on, but I can tell from talking to you, you're all ready to like make a full-length feature. If you haven't talked to this young lady, she's amazing. All right, so any questions about anything I've said? Was it clear enough? I really prayed about being able to deliver this in a way that...
You mentioned that you have written 100 scripts, something like that. So, based on your experience, according to the industry standard today, is there any specific software to write a script rather than Microsoft Word? Because I have been trying to find...
Yes, there's a bunch of different pieces of software, and probably the audience can even answer you better than I can. I used Celltext for a while, but just so you know, I haven't done, I've done screenplays before, but I've mostly done audio dramas, okay? And for audio dramas, I have something that I call a split script that I use that is so easy for that. Yeah, what's some software out there? There's Celltext, there's...
Highland 2.
Final Draft? Matter of fact, I think Final Draft is probably the one right now, right? Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, any other thoughts, comments?
I have a question. So when you're writing your story arc, are you relating the things from the story arc to what is in your story, and then the outline you're going back and writing the scene? Is that
Okay, ask again. I'm not quite sure I understood the question.
so? When you're writing your story arc, are you putting together the story arc and how that relates to your story? So like the inciting incident, and on your story arc, you're writing what the inciting incident for your story is going to be, and then the outline you go back and write the scene. Like,
Okay, were you here yesterday?
yeah.
Okay, great. So as you're going through and you're coming up with these different components, right, you're just asking questions. Yesterday, what I recommend doing is just a lot of brainstorming, right? So when it comes time knowing your eternal message and your what if and your goal and the flaws of your character, you want to come up with your best inciting incident. And you may not know a lot about it yet, right? Maybe it's that the kid fell off the stage in the front of the auditorium and, I don't know, knocked over and burned up the school or something like that. I don't know. Can you tell I'm totally making this up? And that's right when the asteroid came and, no, just kidding. So, right, but then as you're going along, as you're doing all of this, and as you're praying, you're going to keep getting more and more understanding of what your inciting incident should be. So at first, I recommend just brainstorming what comes to mind for an inciting incident, thinking about your story concept, but you don't know your full story yet, but as you're working on the details more and more, that's going to become more and more specific. So for on your outline, I suggest putting the most that you know about it, and then continue working on the rest of the story structure, and as you're doing that, all of those things are going to become more and more defined as you're working. I don't know, did that answer your question? Okay. Whew. Yes?
In a story arc, if you look at the story arc, behind like the white like story arc, there's like character arcs
Mm-hmm.
that you see. I missed day one, so
Okay.
this might be a question relating to day one.
Okay.
But do you like when because the hills go up and down?
Mm-hmm.
So when like for example, say you're doing character one,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts up, does that mean that if he's in that he or she, the character's in a bad place, and then they're going down to a good place?
Mm-hmm.
Or does that mean the opposite?
Well, I just drew an arc so you could tell that there was movement, okay? But here's what I do is I create those story arcs and I say to myself, where is my character going to start and where is he going to end? And then you've got to ask yourself, realistically, how does a person really get from here to here in real life? And then I think about the different stages of what would have to happen in their life for them to make that true transformation, okay? But then how it relates to the story arc is that I'm seeing different places where those things can happen in the story, okay? And as I start to see naturally where the story and that story arc is working together, right, I can start to see how in this scene I can both nail a plot point that I want, and I can also nail one of the movements for the character, right? And I can start combining stuff like that. And in fact, that happens a lot on your outline. As you're outlining, you're starting to go, oh, I can take that point, which was character arc, and I can take this point, and I can blend those together and make them work together, right? Yes?
Do you subject your outline to critique?
Yes.
And often change your
Yes.
story ahead of time before you write it?
Yes. That's a wonderful time to get critique, right? Because it's so much easier to move around an outline, right? So if you can have somebody critique your outline, by the way, this was a great question. What a great place to get critique and start running it past people, right? Because you can solve problems in the outline before you write the pages, where now you have to move these big old chunks of stuff around, right?
I think along the questions about the character arc, you know how yesterday you were talking about the different roles, you got the antagonist, protagonist, all these different roles. Now, not necessarily all of them are going to have a character arc, right? Like the guardian, for example, could just be there for the purpose of providing the means for other characters to achieve or change.
Right.
So I guess in your diagram, you don't want to represent every character.
Exactly true. And we talked about that yesterday. Somebody asked, should every character have a character arc? Oh my goodness, can you imagine if the elevator man had a character arc and all that? So you need to decide who needs character arcs to fit the story. Now, the main character has got to have a character arc, okay? And then all of a sudden, it might start emerging what other characters need that character arc as you're going along. But yeah, if every character has a character arc, you're going to wear the audience out, and your story is going to be so confusing, right? So how many? I think let your story drive who needs the character arcs. Yes.
So this outline that you are teaching is also applicable for children's illustrated books or any other type of books, or like a master outline format?
Yeah, okay, so I believe that story fits so many things, and I believe that a good story always starts with an outline. So listen, if it's a screenplay, if it's a novel, if it's a book, if it's a speech, all of it could fit a storyline. And I think it becomes powerful. But you know what really becomes powerful is when you start using that in conversations. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have a whole bunch of stories that I've got stored away in my brain, and they've all got outlines themselves. So when I meet somebody and I want to make them laugh, I start on my outline because that's the most powerful way for me to communicate. It really is a powerful way to communicate. Outlines are powerful, stories are powerful. And the more you incorporate stories, the more it touches people's hearts and the deeper the message goes. Yes? It is down at the speaker's resource table. What's it actually called? The consignment table. Yes. Thank you for asking.
Do you have your books as an e-book format?
I do. He seems a little nebulous about that answer, doesn't he? Okay. All right, if you want a copy of the ebook, I'll give you my email address, okay? And you can email me, and I can send it to you. How's that sound? So here's my email address. You guys ready? For those of you that have already bought the physical copy of the book, if you're angry at me now, you can probably take it back. All right, so it's proy@creationquest.net. I think I'll just give it to you. It doesn't cost me anything to, what's that? proy@creationquest.net.
But I didn't mean to have it free. It is like to have sell it as an e-book. That's my question.
Yeah, I was all set up to do that, and then I didn't, and life has gone on. And
So it's kind of like
so there you go. You asked, and now you guys can all have a free download. How's that sound? Let's give her a hand. Woo! But if you buy the book, it helps because it pays for the cost of printing the books. But
Say yes.
no.
Bless him anyways.
Yeah.
Just a quick note on the book. I was there yesterday, and she said, yes, buy it now because you're going fast. So you know.
Okay. All right. So I don't know how ethical this is. But there's some people that have paid for this book at this conference. I wonder if this is a top secret between you and me. What do you think?
I have a comment.
Yes.
I purchased the book, and if you're thinking about downloading the ebook, buy the book. Because then you can print copies from your ebook, right? If you want to print sheets to have outlines.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
The book is well worth it, and it's half price from what you normally sell. That's what they told me.
Okay. Wow.
So you can throw a dart.
You can also, if you want a physical copy and they're out, you can go to like Barnes & Noble, and if you Google it, there's a bunch of different places where you can buy it. But if you want to buy it from me, I have no way to sell it to you. So instead, you email it to me, and I give it to you for free as a download. All right, I had more to cover, but this was, I think, the most important things. Let me see if there was any other things that are like really super important.
So with respect to character development, you mentioned the elevator man. I guess sometimes in a story, the unsuspecting person is the hero of the story. So maybe you wouldn't develop
Right. Anybody who's playing a major role in your story is probably suspect for having a character arc if they're playing a major part. So again, you don't want to have all of the characters have character arcs. That's way too much. But you want to have your key characters that the story dictates would have a character arc. So do you have anything to add to anything? I know you've got some wisdom. I hope it's okay to point that out, but you said that you've got some experience with stuff. Would you like to comment on anything that?
Very similar to how you do your outline. I mean, I like to work with multiple sheets, so I take I'll have a separate sheet with the character arc, and I copy and paste because I don't like to get mixed up with so much information on one page, and then I'll color code the character so I can kind of spread out.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Arc and let it-
That's really good. Excellent.
Everything else about the same.
Yes, okay. I think your hand went up first.
Also, what I do when I'm writing stories is I'll cover an entire folder for my story, and then like make different documents for different sections.
Mm-hmm.
And contain it all in a folder.
Yes.
I don't feel like you have to stick to one document.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Okay, back in the back there, and then I'll come back to you, sir. Yeah.
Yes, I want to make a suggestion about, like, I am visually impaired, and I'm a veteran, and
Because of being a veteran, you said?
yes.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome. So there is a lot of people out there that would love to read books. Like right now, I was really suffering to see anything on the screen.
Yeah.
But the reason why I like ebook is because I can do it in the screen
Mm-hmm.
and make it able to go through it.
Right.
But have in mind, if you're gonna publish something in the future, to do it ebooks, because there is, wow, a large amount, especially veterans, that are visually impaired or that they don't have the ability. And generally speaking, the whole population, there's a lot of people that is considered, I don't like to use the word handicap, but disabled in somehow or way, and it would be beneficial to do that. Or maybe, I don't know if you already have it like that.
Yeah, you know what? I think actually Amazon and Barnes & Noble and several others actually do carry the ebook as well of my book. But my offer is still standing that if you email me, I'll send it to you for free. But I understand what you're saying. She's making a great point for the sake of people that can really use ebooks. That's a great way to.
Audiobooks,
Yes,
if you haven't thought of it.
yes. And you're talking to a guy who produces audio drama most of my life. So I understand. Yes, sir.
Oh, I was just going to say about having multiple character arcs versus just like a one character arc. I mean, obviously it would depend on the story, but just a couple of these Sherwood pictures popped in my mind. You know, Fireproof has got
Multiple.
maybe two main characters,
Oh, uh-huh.
husband and wife, that really get followed through the whole film.
Right,
Where the rest of the characters, they don't change too much.
right,
Courageous, you got 4 or 5.
right.
They're all that are changing throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So it just
Right.
depends on the story.
It really does, yep. That is very true. Okay, we have got 2 minutes left. Any other things that anybody wants to share? Yes, sir.
This was more comment for the young lady up front. You want to work on short stories, that works very well. But you can work on your long story too, and just keep that in a separate box for when you're not feeling like the short story, you're not feeling like this one, you can pull your epic novel down and put a little into it. And put it back and work on your shorts. But just, I'm not really the writer, but I do other projects, and it's nice to just, there's days I'm not into this one, but I can pull this one down, and I've got a little interest there to work on today. And then put it back on the shelf and work on the other one.
That's great advice, huh?
Thank you.
Yeah, that was excellent. Okay, last comment, and then I'm going to pray.
Well, I was just saying, so I'm not really a story writer, but I do music, and so that for me is all about storytelling with music. So
Yes.
I'm really appreciating the outline, because at least for me, it's very safe, creating emotional
Yes.
and stuff. And so I love to write my epic, where I'm going, that part of the music first, or at some point, because otherwise I have no idea where I'm
Right.
going to get to. So I was just really appreciating the similarities there.
Oh, good. Yep. Yeah, it totally applies, doesn't it? It's amazing how much this applies to everything. By the way, last comment for those of you who weren't here yesterday. Story arc comes from life itself. It's not a man-made device. It's literally how life goes. We're all living our lives. An inciting incident happens. It throws us into a journey. We've got to make a critical decision to follow God or not to follow God. We've got to set a goal. Hopefully that goal is one that God is leading you to. We have victories and defeats heading towards that. And then about halfway through, you find out that the goal was much deeper than you thought. And then God oftentimes leads us to the point where it looks like ultimate failure. And then God has victory in our lives. And then we come out a different person because of that. And then you cruise along. And then guess what? Here comes the next inciting incident, right? So the reason that this is so powerful when it comes to composing, or whether it comes to speech telling or writing a book or a film, is because it is literally given to us from God on the pattern of life. And that's why this is so important. All right, I'm going to pray, and then I'll have you come up. Dear Father, thank you so much for this time together. Father, I thank you for each person in this room. And God, I just pray that you would help them to be inspired and excited, and that they can feel like they can do it. And so, Father, I pray that you would use them in powerful ways. And God, I pray for the rest of the guild that you would just be with us. And then, Father, as the film festival starts, I just pray you would give us a great time of celebration and fellowship. We just pray these things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. All right. Thank you.